On the endless horizon of the Persian steppe, an army of 50,000 men shines under the sun like a mirage of steel and silk. They are the cream of the cavalry of one of the world's largest and richest empires, a vision of power and glory destined to crush any enemy who dares to challenge them. Before them, camped in the distance, is a force so small it seems like a miscalculation, a smudge on the landscape. They are not knights in shining armor, but a band of rough-looking horsemen, mounted on shaggy, hardy ponies, dressed in furs and leather. To the generals of Shah Muhammad II, they are not a threat. They are an insult, a nuisance to be swept from the battlefield like dust. Victory is not a possibility. It is a ceremonial certainty. But what the Persians, in their hubris, cannot see is that they are not about to face an army, but a completely new philosophy of war, forged in the icy winds of the steppe and hardened by an iron will. Those rough horsemen are not mere barbarians. They are the children of the eternal sky, the wolves of Genghis Khan, and their general, the legendary Subutai, is the master hunter. They have not come to fight an honorable battle according to the rules of chivalry. They have come to hunt, and the vast, proud Persian army, with its banners waving in the wind and its trumpets announcing its own greatness, is not an opponent. It is the prey, magnificent in its ignorance, about to be led to the slaughterhouse. This is not the story of how a larger army was defeated by a smaller one. It is the chronicle of how a revolutionary military system dismantled and annihilated an obsolete doctrine of war. The Mongol victory was not simply due to better bows or faster riders, though they had them. It was the triumph of intelligence over brute force, of predatory patience over impulsive arrogance. The rain of arrows that is about to wipe 50,000 knights off the map will not be the beginning of the battle, as the Persians would expect. It will be the final execution, the methodical and brutal closing of a trap that had been set hours before, using the terrain itself as a weapon and the enemy's pride as the perfect bait. At the forefront of this steppe storm are two minds that will reshape the world. Genghis Khan, the great Khan, the architect of conquest, and at his side, as his most lethal instrument, his most brilliant general, Subutai, the war dog. They are not impulsive barbarians. They are cold, methodical, and relentless strategists, driven not by bloodlust, but by a calculated fury. The Shah of the Khwarezmian Empire has committed the unforgivable sin. He has murdered Mongol ambassadors, an act that violates the sacred laws of the steppe and the sky. Therefore, this war is not a simple campaign of conquest. It is a mission of divine retribution, the execution of a sentence passed down by the eternal sky itself, and they are its executioners. The army they command is a living contradiction, small in number but infinite in its lethality. The vanguard units facing the Persians often do not exceed a few thousand horsemen, the archetypal figure of 3,000. The entire Mongol army is a mounted entity, an extension of the steppe pony itself. The vast majority are lightly armored horse archers, capable of riding for days and shooting with deadly accuracy in any direction, even backward. A minority of heavy lancers, equally mounted, wait to deliver the coup de grace. They are not an army in the traditional sense. They are a perfectly coordinated pack of wolves, and the battlefield is their hunting ground. Facing this predatory force stands the power and pomp of the Khwarezmian Empire, personified in its leader, Shah Muhammad II. His mindset is that of an emperor at the peak of his power, arrogant, dismissive, and with an overconfidence that borders on blindness. He and his generals, adorned in silk and Damascus steel, look at the Mongols and see only dirty, undisciplined nomads. They blindly trust in the overwhelming numerical superiority of their forces and, above all, in the power of their elite cavalry, the Ghulams, heavily armored slave warriors who form the core of their army. For them, the battle will be a spectacle, a demonstration of their might, a glorious charge to crush the insolent. The Shah's army is a magnificent weapon from a bygone era, a massive force of 50,000 men or more, designed for a single purpose, to win through a devastating and decisive shock cavalry charge. Their entire doctrine is based on direct confrontation, on the collision of force against force, and in this, their greatest strength, lies their fatal flaw. They are incapable of conceiving of an enemy who refuses to fight by their rules. An enemy that does not present a solid front to charge against, that does not stand firm to be crushed. Their honorable battle mentality makes them a predictable giant. And their most powerful weapon. The charge of their heavy cavalry is about to become the tool of their own destruction, luring them into the greatest trap of their lives. The chessboard for this hunt is the steppe itself, an endless expanse of open plains that disappears into the horizon. For the Persians, this is the ideal setting, the perfect field of honor to unleash the thunderous charge of their heavy cavalry. But for Subutai, space is not a void. It is his primary weapon, the canvas upon which he will paint his masterpiece of annihilation. This endless plain denies the Persians any place to anchor their flanks, any hill or forest in which to take refuge. It gives his horse archers unlimited room to maneuver, to attack from any angle, to retreat at will, and to execute the perfect encirclement. The Persians believe they have chosen a battlefield for their glory. In reality, the Mongols have guided them to an open-air execution arena. The genius of the Mongol strategy lies not in strength, but in deception, in a tactic so lethal it became their legendary signature, the feigned retreat, the mangudai. It is not a simple feint. It is a deadly piece of theater, designed to exploit the enemy's psychology. It consists of presenting a weak front, attacking briefly with a shower of arrows, and then, at the crucial moment, turning and fleeing in apparent disorganized panic. It is a calculated insult to the honor of the Persian knights, an irresistible bait for their arrogance. The greatest trap in history is about to be sprung, luring an entire army to its destruction. To ride with the wolves and not miss the hunt that will change the world, join our horde by subscribing and leaving your like. The chase is about to begin. The battle begins not with the clash of a charge, but with the insolence of a whisper. A small Mongol vanguard, barely a few thousand horsemen, detaches from their camp and trots calmly towards the colossal Persian army. They do not advance in a threatening battle formation, but like a band of curious, almost dismissive scouts. To the proud Khwarezmian knights, this sight is an outrage. These dirty nomads, mounted on their shaggy ponies, dare to approach the most glorious manifestation of imperial power with a disrespect so blatant it borders on madness. The tension in the Persian line is palpable, a mixture of disdain and a rising anger at the audacity of such an insignificant foe. The Mongols begin their deadly dance. They ride in wide arcs, always staying just outside the range of an effective charge, but within the range of their own composite bows. They begin to loose volleys of arrows, not in a massive assault, but in a constant, infuriating harassment. They shout insults, mock the Persians, immobility, and execute the legendary Parthian shot, turning in their saddles to shoot backward as they ride away. Every whistling arrow and every insult carried on the wind is a needle in the ego of the Persian knights, a direct challenge to their honor, their valor, and their very reason for being as warriors. The provocation is a masterpiece of psychological warfare. The Persian commanders, consumed by arrogance, fall into the trap with absolute predictability. Their military doctrine has no answer for an enemy that refuses to fight honorably. The idea of standing still while this rabble humiliates them is intolerable. Rage clouds their judgment. They do not see a tactic, they see cowardice. And in their culture, cowardice must be mercilessly crushed. No strategic deliberation is needed. The decision comes from the gut, from wounded pride. The order resounds along the line, transmitted by horns and standards. Charge. 50,000 men prepare to wipe this stain from the face of the earth. The ground trembles. 50,000 war horses, massive beasts bred for shock, surge forward in a thundering tide of steel and fury. It is one of the most magnificent and terrifying sights of medieval warfare. The sun glints off thousands of helmets and mailcoats. The long lances dip like a moving forest. And the roar of the charge is the sound of the world's end. It is the embodiment of brute force, an avalanche designed to pulverize anything in its path. The Persian knights feel the exhilaration of battle, the certainty that in a few minutes they will be riding over the corpses of their insolent foes. Victory seems not only inevitable, but imminent. But as the wave of steel is about to crash upon them, the Mongols do the unthinkable. They do not brace for the charge. They do not panic and scatter. With a discipline that seems unnatural, the entire Mongol vanguard wheels as one and flees, They retreat, but not in a disorganized rout. It is a controlled withdrawal, maintaining a constant distance, always close enough to seem catchable, always far enough not to be caught. For the Persians, this is the ultimate proof of their enemies, cowardice. The ordered charge, driven by rage, now transforms into a frenzied, jubilant pursuit. They believe they are hunting a terrified enemy. The chase stretches for miles across the open steppe. The magnificent Persian charge formation, their greatest pride, completely disintegrates. Discipline evaporates, replaced by a chaotic race in which each knight competes to be the first to reach and kill a Mongol. The faster horses pull ahead, the slower fall behind, and the battle line becomes dangerously stretched over a vast territory. The heavy Persian war horses, carrying fully armored riders, begin to sweat and lose steam, while the hardy Mongol ponies, lighter and with legendary stamina, maintain a steady, grueling pace. After hours, the landscape of the pursuit has changed. The Persian euphoria has given way to a growing frustration and a deadly exhaustion. Their mounts, which are shock weapons designed for a short, brutal charge, not a marathon, are on the verge of collapse. The riders, separated from their units, gasp under the sun, their heavy armor turning into ovens. They are scattered, disorganized, and far from the safety of their camp and their infantry. They have been drawn into a void, a no man's land where their strength has become weakness, their cohesion has evaporated, and their power has been diluted to insignificance. It is at this moment of maximum vulnerability that the music of the hunt changes. The fleeing Mongol vanguard stops fleeing. A whistling arrow, their distinctive acoustic signal, cuts through the air. Suddenly, the retreating force splits in two, wheeling towards the flanks with astonishing fluidity. And then, the exhausted and confused Persian knights look up to the horizon. Terror, cold and paralyzing, begins to take hold. What they see is not the empty steppe they have been chasing, but a new dark line growing rapidly, a line that is not only in front of them, but also to their right and their left. The trap has been sprung. From the low hills, from the hidden valleys, or simply emerging from the apparent nothingness of the steppe, the main Mongol army appears. Tens of thousands of horsemen, fresh and prepared, emerge to complete a perfect encirclement. The Persians realize the horrific truth. They had not been chasing a fleeing enemy. They had been herded like a flock to the slaughterhouse. The feigned retreat was not a tactic. It was an act of deadly shepherding. Now they are trapped, exhausted, outnumbered at the point of contact, and completely surrounded by the wolves. There is no escape. The field of honor has been revealed as a tomb. The Mongols do not charge. It would be a waste of energy. Instead, with terrifying discipline, they form the Nurj, the circle of death. Thousands of horse archers begin to ride in a vast, constant circle around the disorganized, trapped mass of Persians. There are no war cries, no uncontrolled fury, only the methodical efficiency of a mass execution. For the Persian knights, trapped in the center, this is a new kind of hell. They are too tired to charge, they have nowhere to flee, and they become the stationary target in the center of a deadly shooting gallery. The silence before the storm is the final torture. Then, on a single command, the sky darkens. From all directions, a rain of tens of thousands of arrows begins to fall upon the Persian knights. It is not a volley, it is an incessant deluge, a sound like a million hissing snakes. The accuracy and volume are unimaginable. The horses, which are large, unprotected targets, fall first by the thousands, screaming in pain and panic, trapping their heavily armored riders under their weight and turning them into immobile targets. The Mongol arrows, designed to pierce armor, find every gap, every weak point. There is nowhere to take cover. The glorious Persian cavalry is being dismantled from a distance, unable to strike a single blow. The rain of arrows is systematic, unceasing. The Persian formation dissolves into a chaos of death and despair. Knights who manage to free themselves from their dead horses are cut down before they can take a few steps. It is a scientific annihilation, the application of overwhelming firepower on an immobilized enemy. Only when the arrow storm has done its work, when the Persian army has been reduced to a writhing mess of dying men and animals, do the Mongol heavy lancers advance. Their job is not to fight, but to exterminate the few survivors. The battle is over. The hunt has been a success. The triumph of mind over muscle is absolute. When the last arrow found its mark and silence returned to the steppe, the battlefield was not a battlefield, but an open grave. The statistics of the slaughter were more than a victory. They were a mathematical proof of annihilation. Entire armies, like the one that fought at the Indus, were wiped from existence, not just defeated, but exterminated to the last man. 50,000 of the Islamic world's finest warriors lay dead under the sun, a vast tapestry of shattered steel and broken ambitions. In stark contrast, Mongol casualties were so minimal as to be almost insulting, often numbering in the hundreds rather than thousands. It had not been a battle. It had been a harvest. Genghis Khan's wolf pack had picked the field clean, proving that in this new age of warfare, numerical superiority was simply an invitation to a greater slaughter. The fate of the architect of this catastrophe, Shah Muhammad II, was the most humiliating epilogue imaginable for so powerful an emperor. He did not die in a glorious charge, defending his standard. Instead, after watching his armies be destroyed one by one with the same terrifying efficiency, he became a terrified fugitive in his own empire. He was hunted relentlessly by Genghis Khan's generals, Subutai and Jabi, the war dogs, who pursued him across deserts and mountains with implacable tenacity. His empire collapsed around him as he ran for his life, until finally, abandoned by all, he found his last refuge. He died of sickness, alone and in misery on a small, forgotten island in the Caspian Sea, a pathetic end for the man who had dared to defy the eternal sky. The immediate impact of this victory was an earthquake that shattered the foundations of the Islamic world. With its armies annihilated and its leader a hunted ghost, the vast and wealthy Khwarezmian Empire collapsed like a sandcastle. City after city fell to the Mongol tide, often without offering resistance, paralyzed by the terror of the stories coming from the steppe. The campaign had not just destroyed an army, it had decapitated an empire and broken the spirit of a people. For the Mongols, victory was not the end of the war, but the key that unlocked the door. Now, the path to the rest of Persia, to the heart of the Middle East, and even to the steppes of Russia, lay wide open. The hunt was over, and the conquest of the world had just begun. The Mongol campaign against the Khwarezmian Empire was not merely the fall of a kingdom, it was the demolition of the dam that had held back the Mongol flood and protected the rest of the world. With the annihilation of this Islamic superpower, the most formidable force between them and Europe, Genghis Khan and Subutai not only created a power vacuum, but opened a highway for conquest. The gates to Persia, the Caucasus, the Russian steppes, and eventually, the heart of Europe were thrown wide open. The geopolitical map of the 13th century was not just altered, it was violently erased and redrawn with the hoofprints of Mongol ponies, a change so fundamental and bloody that its tremors would be felt for generations across 3 continents. Beyond geopolitics, this campaign cemented the dark legend of the Mongols, transforming them from a distant threat into the apocalypse incarnate. Terror became their most effective weapon, traveling faster than their own horses. The stories of entire cities massacred, of armies vanishing on the steppe, and of the ruthless cruelty of their justice paralyzed their future enemies. The name Mongol became synonymous with a force of nature, an inevitable storm against which resistance was futile. This reputation, forged on the fields of Persia, caused countless cities to surrender without a fight, proving that the annihilation of one enemy could be the most effective way to conquer 100 more. From a military standpoint, the invasion of Khwarezm was a revolution. It exposed the obsolescence of aristocratic warfare based on the heavy cavalry charge and the decisive battle. The Mongols taught the world a new and terrifying lesson. War was not a duel of honor, but a scientific hunt. They demonstrated that mobility, communication, discipline, and psychological warfare were infinitely superior to heavy armor and brute force. The image of the arrow storm dismantling the world's best cavalry became the symbol of a new era, the moment when the predatory science of the steppe forever surpassed the glory of feudal steel in open country. Ironically, this act of mass destruction laid the groundwork for an era of unprecedented connection. By sweeping away old borders and unifying the territory from the Pacific to the Danube, the Mongols created the largest contiguous land empire in history. Within this vast domain, the infamous Pax Mongolica made trade routes like the Silk Road safer than ever before. The very empire born from the annihilation of Khwarezm became the conduit through which technologies, ideas, and peoples traveled between East and West, accelerating the course of world history. The destruction of one world, therefore, became the brutal and bloody birth of a new, more interconnected one. The ultimate secret of the Arrow Storm, the engine of this long-range annihilation, lay not solely in the archer's skill, but in the technological marvel he held in his hands. The Mongol composite bow was not a simple piece of wood. It was a masterpiece of laminated engineering, a tension engine built from layers of birch, animal horn, and sinew, bonded with a glue derived from fish bladders. This construction gave it an unheard-of power and elasticity for its compact size, allowing a horseman to wield a weapon with the power of an English longbow, capable of shooting specialized arrows, armor-piercing, incendiary, or whistling for signaling. Over 300 meters, it outranged and outpenetrated almost any other bow of its time. It was not just a weapon. It was the technological superiority of the steppe made portable. When this weapon system was multiplied by the thousands, the result transcended battle to become a lethal meteorological phenomenon. A trained Mongol archer could loose up to 10 arrows per minute. Multiply this by a vanguard of just 3,000 archers, and the result is a kill zone saturated by 30,000 projectiles every 60 seconds. The rain of arrows was not a metaphor. It was a literal description of a man-made storm of steel and wood. The Persian knight, trapped in the center of the Nergi, was not fighting other men. He was being systematically dismantled by an industrial process of annihilation. His individual courage, his shining armor, and his noble lineage became tragically irrelevant in the face of the overwhelming mathematics of death falling from the sky.